The moment he opened his eyes, he found himself lying in a cold, clinical laboratory. The researchers nearby were frozen in horror, their eyes glued to his legs. His instincts told him that something was terribly wrong. Trembling, he pulled the blanket off his body. What met his gaze were not his familiar legs, but cold, mechanical alien prosthetics. The shock hit him like a physical blow, almost stealing his breath. Instinctively, he clutched the blanket tightly over his legs. Driven by an irrepressible urge, he unzipped his pants to check, and only after confirming he was still intact did he let out a shaky, tentative breath. At that moment, the doctor's cold, calculated voice cut through the air, revealing that Nick's legs were built using alien technology. Because of his perfect integration with the alien tech, the organization had taken a profound interest in him. He urged Nick to calm down and cooperate fully, insisting that only by doing so could they provide the help he needed. But Nick found this advice bitterly ironic. Looking at his unconscious girlfriend beside him, a wild, reckless thought surged through his mind. Struggling to his feet, he marched to the hospital room door and, channeling the strength of his mechanical legs, kicked it wide open. Fortunately, the researchers were too intimidated by the power of his legs to follow. Only the doctor dared to pursue him. The doctor shouted after him, warning that the upper level was dangerous and that only here could they find protection. But having been treated like nothing more than a lab rat, Nick could no longer bring himself to trust a word the doctor said. He tore through the facility's equipment, dragging Haley with him in a desperate bid to escape. After plunging through a long, pitch-black tunnel, blinding sunlight finally broke through, and Haley stirred awake from the jostling. Nick helped her to her feet, guiding her toward a gas station visible in the distance. By sheer luck, they encountered a kind-hearted woman who gave them a lift for part of the journey. Though the woman seemed somewhat off, they arrived at the gas station without further incident. Nick told Haley to wait by the truck while he went inside the gas station to try to make a call for help. To his shock, every phone line was dead, and the television broadcasted a wanted alert featuring both of them. Fear gripped Nick's chest as he turned to leave, only to see Haley being forcibly loaded onto a truck. He poured every ounce of strength into chasing the vehicle, clutching the truck's door and demanding the driver stop immediately. But the driver didn't stop. He shoved Nick violently off the vehicle instead. Watching the truck speed away, Nick refused to give up and sprinted after it again with relentless determination. The driver slammed the accelerator, panicking, but Nick's inhuman speed rapidly closed the distance. The driver, terrified by Nick's unnatural speed, scrambled to grab a gun from the cab while continuing to floor the pedal. Just as he fumbled, Haley suddenly raised a gun, forcing the driver to slam on the brakes and come to a halt. They left the stunned driver stranded on the roadside and took control of the truck to make their escape. No one could have imagined that this superhuman man had been relying on crutches only days ago. To help Nick recover from his grief, his girlfriend and his friend Jonah organized a road trip. That night, as they rested at a roadside motel, and Nick was about to drift off, his phone suddenly buzzed. Nomad's name flashed on the screen, and Nick hastily shook Jonah awake. They grabbed their laptops in a frantic rush, ducking into the bathroom, each blaming the other for the enormous mess. Not long ago, Nomad had illegally hacked MIT's servers, almost getting them expelled due to the resulting misunderstandings. Nomad showed no remorse. In fact, he mocked their technical skills outright. Furious and determined to expose him at DEF CON, Nick instead received a chilling email. Inside was a live feed showing them both, captured in real time, inside the bathroom. Rather than frightening them, the email only fueled their competitive drive. Excitedly, they opened their Linux terminals and began tracing the IP address from Nomad's last email. Thanks to their seamless coordination, within seconds they pinpointed Nomad's location, Nevada. The next day, the three of them decided to head to Nevada to uncover Nomad's true identity. At a gas station, Nick got out to buy coffee, while Haley wandered alone to the edge of a canyon for some solitude. After Nick's injury, he began to distance himself from Haley, leaving her deeply frustrated. As she stared blankly at the canyon, Nick found her and apologized for his behavior. Since his injury, he had constantly feared that Haley might leave him because of it. The physical pain and mental torment drove him to push Haley away as a form of self-protection. But his cowardly confession enraged Haley. She ripped off their tokens of affection and threw them away. Even though their relationship hit rock bottom, they still decided to first track down Nomad. That night, using the address, the three of them located an abandoned cabin in the desert. Nick and Jonah told Haley to stay in the car and lock the doors, while they cautiously stepped into the cabin with their cameras raised. Inside, there was nothing but dilapidated furniture and dusty server racks. No signs of habitation at all. Just as they were puzzled, Haley's screams suddenly pierced the air outside. They rushed out, only to find the car empty, and the radio filled with nothing but static. Then Haley's voice came from the woods. She was being suspended in midair by some invisible force. A blinding white light flashed, and all three lost consciousness completely. No one realized they had stepped into a horrific trap. with a fate already meticulously laid out in the shadows. When he woke up again, Nick found himself in a strange facility, everyone around him clad in protective suits. He was strapped tightly into a wheelchair, completely immobilized. A man claiming to be Dr. Damon approached and asked him a few basic cognitive questions. He then explained that they had encountered an alien entity the previous night, and the level of infection was currently severe. Nick urgently asked about his friend's whereabouts, but the doctor remained evasive. Seeing Nick's disbelief, the doctor played the footage from the abandoned cabin. As the footage slowed, a chill ran down Nick's spine. Deep in the woods, an alien creature silently watched them. The signal they had been desperately chasing turned out to be this terrifying alien. Before Nick could react, blood poured from his nose. The researchers panicked and rushed him back to the room. Everything upon waking left him uneasy. He scanned the surroundings, trying to find any clue. All he found were codes on his arm and a keypad at the door, while the doctor watched his every move from behind. The doctor's secrecy and the uncertainty about his companion's fate filled Nick with intense anxiety. At that moment, Jonah's voice echoed through the ventilation duct. They exchanged words through the duct. Jonah explained that the people here were doing strange things, and that his body felt off. Before he could finish, Jonah's voice abruptly vanished, and no matter how loudly Nick called, there was no response. From that day on, Nick was pushed to the observation room by the researchers every single day. He noticed the clocks in the hallway had stopped, and the layout of the bathrooms was extremely strange. Around a corner, he found Haley lying unconscious in one of the rooms. Nick rushed to check on her, only to be pinned down by staff from behind. Upon seeing the doctor, he angrily demanded that he would only continue answering questions after seeing Haley. Seeing how agitated Nick was, the doctor promised that once the day's observation was over, he would take him to see Haley. After the questioning ended, the doctor pushed Nick to the hallway outside Haley's room. Seeing Haley still lying unconscious, Nick anxiously grabbed her chart, trying to understand her condition. Strangely, the entire chart was blank, and the doctor brushed it off with a vague explanation. The eerie surroundings and the doctor's evasive behavior strengthened Nick's resolve to escape. Back in his room, he bit through the IV tube, crushed some cookies, and poured the crumbs inside. Then he blew hard toward the keypad, causing the crumbs to fall and reveal faint prints on specific buttons. He contacted Jonah through the vent and told him the numbers, and together they worked to crack the code. During their exchange, Jonah revealed that the staff were trying to remove something from inside his body. A few days ago, they made him drink some kind of liquid, and afterward his hand completely lost all sensation. Meanwhile, the doctor's team was conducting experiments on a cow. As the gate slowly opened, the lab fell into total darkness, followed by violent banging sounds. Just as Nick was being taken for observation again, an alarm blared throughout the facility, announcing a containment breach. The researcher monitoring him rushed out, and Nick took the chance to slip into the restroom, trying to find an escape route. But he was quickly discovered by incoming staff and forced into a small containment room. When the alarm finally stopped, Nick noticed a deep, savage scratch mark on the wall of the facility. When he saw the doctor again, the doctor suddenly asked about the sensation in Nick's legs. Nick ignored the question and demanded to know what happened to Jonah. He knew the doctor had been monitoring him. Everything he and Jonah discussed must have already been heard. But the doctor, maintaining a blank expression, claimed Jonah was already dead when they found them, and that there was no vent in Nick's room at all. The mounting oddities made Nick increasingly suspicious. He no longer dared trust anyone in the facility. After successfully cracking the room code, he pulled Haley's hospital bed and headed toward the exit. His movements were clumsy and difficult, but fortunately none of the researchers were paying attention. Just as they were about to reach the main door, the bed got wedged against the wall. Nick broke into a cold sweat, frantically adjusting the angle, until he managed to get the bed through just before anyone noticed. But there was a problem. He hadn't considered the height of the keypad, so he had to use the IV tube to reach and press the buttons. Just as he was about to finish entering the code, the doctor appeared behind him. The doctor gently pulled his wrist back, shattering his hope of escape, and Nick slipped once again into unconsciousness. When he woke again, Nick discovered that his legs had been transformed into mechanical limbs by the doctor. Fueled by rage, he used the power of his new legs to escape the facility with Haley, hijacking a truck on the way. But they hadn't gotten far before they realized the once flat highway now ended in a massive, impossible chasm. Forced to turn back, they searched the desert for another way out. Luckily, they found an abandoned house, and Nick decided to go in to look for a map or a phone. Elsewhere, the doctor tracked down the woman who had given them a ride and asked whether she'd seen Nick and Haley. Strangely, she repeated the same line like a broken recording. Then blue blood suddenly trickled from her nose, and the doctor immediately reacted, drawing his gun and eliminating her. He then located the truck driver Nick had thrown out earlier and interrogated him about their whereabouts. But the driver's eyes were vacant, and he rambled incoherently in response. He even raised a shotgun to threaten the doctor. But the doctor shot him as well. Meanwhile, Nick tried to make a call inside the house, but nothing went through. While searching, Haley found a physical map with no markings on it. But Nick recognized several landmarks and quickly tore a sheet from the logbook to jot down a route. As night fell, they decided to stay there until morning and continue searching for a way out. As the two rested close together at night, a sudden noise came from outside the house. Nick immediately pulled Haley into the room, preparing to sneak out through the rear exit. But as they peeked out, they unexpectedly ran into Jonah, who was hiding there as well. He was wearing the facility's protective suit, proving that the doctor had been lying to Nick all along. To make matters worse, once everyone calmed down, Nick noticed a metal button behind Haley, and all of them shared a common code: 23541. Jonah explained that this sequence was actually the code for the entire area, and combined, it revealed that this was Area 51. They were like lab mice, constantly monitored, and he always felt that something was missing. During their conversation, Nick suddenly noticed a lot of blood on Jonah's gloves. Under Nick's questioning, Jonah removed his gloves, revealing that his hands had also been transformed into alien mechanical prosthetics. The despair of being modified and the fear of an unknown fate clung to the three of them like strangling vines. Nick firmly declared that they had to escape and expose everything, even if there was only one path. The three resolutely set out on their escape, while the doctor rushed toward the checkpoint. Jonah put on the protective suit and sat in the driver's seat, posing as facility staff. Nick and Haley hid in the truck bed, attempting to slip past unnoticed. But after the police searched the truck, they suddenly demanded that Jonah get out for inspection. With his identity exposed, Jonah immediately started the truck, attempting to force his way through. But the raised spikes jammed the wheels, and the police quickly surrounded him with guns drawn. Seeing this, Jonah urged Nick and Haley to leave while he pushed the door open and charged out, engaging the police. He rushed toward the checkpoint's command room, crawling on the ground to avoid incoming bullets. He tried to deactivate the spike barrier, but his mechanical fingers were too bulky to operate the keyboard. To make matters worse, a grenade was thrown into the command room. With a loud explosion, the entire command room was instantly reduced to rubble, and Jonah was thrown to the ground by the blast. Struggling to get up, he saw that the computers were completely destroyed and resolved to sacrifice himself to save Nick and Haley. He resolutely charged toward the truck, but was shot by police and fell to the ground. Nick, in a frenzy, ran over and dragged him behind the truck. Haley cried out for Jonah to get in and come with them, but Jonah flatly refused. He realized he could no longer leave and only wanted to use his last strength to save them.
Nick, keep up. You put this shit on the accelerator. But when I yell go, you go, Nick. I need you to go. I need you to go. Please.
Recalling the times they had run side by side, Nick could only hold back his tears and return to the truck. Jonah mustered his last ounce of strength and punched the spike barrier in front of him. As the spikes were completely destroyed, Nick immediately floored the accelerator and drove off. Jonah was fully exposed to the police, but he showed no fear and slammed his hands into the ground. The massive shockwave spread, instantly destroying everything around and successfully buying time for Nick and Haley. After driving for a while, the doctor and a large group of police appeared ahead of the truck. To break through the blockade, Nick had Haley fasten her seatbelt and then slammed the accelerator forward. But the doctor had already prepared, having the police lay a large number of spikes on the road. As the truck went completely out of control, Nick and Haley were thrown from the bed. Despite being battered and bruised, Haley grabbed Nick's hand and expressed his love. A helicopter slowly descended, and the police carried Haley onto a stretcher, taking her to an unknown location. Before leaving, Haley put the keepsake she had thrown into the canyon into Nick's hand. Watching Haley disappear, Nick was filled with pure rage. Using the power of his mechanical legs, he struggled to stand. The doctor slowly approached him, advising him to forget Haley and stop resisting. After all, he was their perfect creation, a seamless fusion of human and alien technology. Nick's gaze suddenly locked on the doctor's nameplate, which read Damon. The mysterious hacker they had been chasing, Nomad, was the doctor before him. From the moment they started tracking Nomad, they had walked straight into the trap of this terrifying organization. The humiliation of being toyed with, the pain of transformation, and the grief of losing a friend completely overwhelmed Nick. He let out a painful roar, and his mechanical legs instantly unleashed tremendous power as he charged forward. His rage completely destroyed everything along his path. As he crossed a bridge, his body smashed through an invisible barrier. Nick turned around in confusion, seeing the doctor remove his helmet with a sinister grin. It was only then that he realized why everyone in the facility had been wearing protective suits. They only had human faces, and behind them were alien bodies covered with mesh-like metal. This was not Area 51 at all, but a spaceship floating in outer space. The desert, highways, and gas stations they had seen before were all Earth projections simulated by the ship. And at that moment, he saw the familiar sequence of numbers again. 2, 3, 5, 41. Jonah's sacrifice hadn't broken the cage, and Haley's departure took away the last shred of hope. When flesh was replaced by machinery, and the desert became a projection, their fate had already been sealed. Their resistance and everything they had held onto became a spectacle under observation. Only their friendship remained as a faint light in this desperate experiment.